Welcome back to the Speaking and Communicating podcast. I am your host, Roberta. If you are looking to improve your communication skills, both professionally and personally, this is the podcast you should be tuning into. And by the end of this episode, please remember to subscribe, give a rating, and a review. Our podcast focuses mainly on leadership and communication skills. So, my guest today, Atlas Aultman, who is the best-selling author of leadership books. He is a former Air Force Special Operations Communications and a nationally ranked speaker in the US. Is here to talk to us about his experience, not only himself, but with his son, on how he got started on teaching leadership to children and how parents can do so based on him leading elite teams in the Air Force and other military branches. And before I go any further, please help me welcome him to the show. Hi, Atlas.
Hi, Roberta. How are you and your crew? I love this show. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Oh, love to you too. And I see somebody else is joining us on your lap.
This is Yumi. This is the inspiration for the kids leadership series that we published for the last couple of years, my son and I. And thank you for that warm introduction. She is just an amazing, heartfelt story maker herself. But yeah, she looks like a fox, and that's where all of the titles came from. So if you're not watching, this little dog right here is a Shiba Inu. It looks just like a fox. And her name is Yumi, which stands for beautiful in Japanese, and she's glad to be here too.
That is amazing. Welcome to the show, Yumi. You certainly do look like a fox, don't you? Thank you for being an inspiration, and especially because we love storytelling on this show. Thank you for inspiring your dad and his son.
All right. She's going to say goodbye now.
You're so cute. He really does look like a fox. She
I know she does.
Yes, that was awesome. So, as I was saying earlier, before we get into the nitty-gritties, please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah. So, Atlas Aultman, I have almost 3 decades in the United States military. I've worked in elite teams. Every organization that I've been in has won major awards. I've worked in the White House for the Obama administration, advancing him with Secret Service and other military units. I've worked in special operations around the world, doing some innovation and technology and communication specific things. I've worked in all the combat zones that we are majorly involved in, from the Horn of Africa to Iraq and Afghanistan. And then we've had some specific missions in other areas. I've been in around 33 countries where I've led teams. And what's happened in each one of them has been recorded. I took a whole bunch of notes. And what I like to call it is being a student of awesomeness. So whenever I see something awesome, I grab my little notebook and I'm like, Roberta podcast. And then I start writing down exactly what it is. And
we should all be like that.
We should. And when I hit the button to retire, I started looking at these notes and I found this pattern for leadership and communication. And it's 3 things, and I'll share it with your audience. But that kind of got me into this whole realm of telling people what I've learned over 30 years in all of these unique sideline to history experiences. And it's now I get to do this all the time, which is fun for me. So that's a little bit about me. I have a son. He is a fantastic young man. He has helped me with my books by looking at the pictures and making sure that they match the words and the illustration, and just keeping everything clear so that whenever someone reads the book, a child isn't looking at a picture that doesn't match what's being said in the story. So he's been fantastic. At 14, when we published our first book, he became the editor of a best-selling book and started his resume. I was like, yeah, let's go, dude. He's like, yeah.
When most 14-year-olds are playing video games, that's amazing.
Yeah, he still plays video games, so there's still time for that.
Right. But at least he's helping his dad co-author books. That is amazing. So what got you started? Is it so based on your experience?
Yeah.
Over 30 years? Would you like to first share with us how you got started in writing the books, and then tell us the three things that you mentioned earlier that you noticed were a pattern?
Yeah. So a book really started when I hit the retirement button. I started collecting all the notes that I've had. But when I realized that there was a need was when I was in a course for commanders. It was me and six other commanders, and we paid a lot of money for an organization to come in and tell us how to be advanced leaders, not beginning leaders, not executive leaders, just advanced leaders, because we were already proven as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And when the course began in this very well-known agency, we realized that we were hitting repeat on a lot of lessons that we already knew. So the course lasted a week, and I started calling other commanders around the world. I'm like, hey, are you guys getting this too? And they were, and everyone was missing the mark. So we came up with 5 to 6 different things that every commander needs to do to advance the ball. And one of them falls right in line with your show. It's communication. You have to be a good communicator. You have to be a good communicator to be a good commander and a good leader. But you also have to be a great communicator in order to get things done and change the world.
Mm-hmm.
So communication was one of the big key things that we started looking at. The other things were time management, and how do
Yes.
you do that with technology that's always changing? And the other thing was money. And so the top three things out of the top 5 things that we all agreed on were those things. And what I realized when I started taking all my notes in, I was like, wow, these 3 things are exactly what we focused on in all of these very elite teams. And people, always people. So
Mm-hmm.
the number one thing for every successful place, it doesn't matter whether it's in the military, in business, in education, academia, it doesn't matter. The number one thing that everyone has to focus on is people. And so, well, how do you do that? For me, when I started looking at that, I wrote it into 3 chapters, and I looked at myself first,
Mm.
because if you're going to change the world, start with yourself, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And then my team. If I can change myself and my team, we're going to be super powerful for whatever it is that we need to be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing is our organization or mission or whatever it is that gets you going for whatever good you're doing in the world. So those are the 3 things to a person that made a holistic 5-part plan. So as a leader, those 5 things are what we started juggling. And I created a mini course for my lowercase commanders, my flight commanders, my first time commanders. And I said, hey guys, this is what you need to look at. And it was really well received.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started doing it in special operations for a lot of people that had lots of years in special operations. And it was really well received. And then I did it again and again. And every time I was like, man, I got something here. I probably just need to give it to the world. So I wrote a book, and that is my rule of 3. Rule of 3 then pushed its way into a couple really well-known publishers. One of them was through a contact of mine who had an editor in Harvard Business Review, and I started working
Oh.
with Harvard Business Review, and they started giving me instructions, send me a chapter at a time. So I started sending it, and then I heard something from Dave Goggins, who wrote a couple great books, and he said, "Don't let anybody publish your book because they'll own the content."
Mm.
And I sat there for a while on that statement, and I pulled it back from Harvard Business Review. I said, "Hey, thanks for looking. I'm just going to publish it myself." And I started taking in pre-orders and pre-sales, and that was about a year and a half ago. And I had enough money to then pay for an editor, pay for copy edit, pay for formatting, pay for the book cover, and everyone who saw this and had my class got to participate, and they actually gave me money for the book to come out early, which I put it in the
Right.
print shop yesterday. So it's going to come to me probably in about 2 weeks, and I'll start pushing it out to all those people that have been in my class already, and those people that have contributed to the content, and those people that gave me lots of good feedback, or some of them just gave me money because they believed it's a
Mm-hmm.
need. So that's the story of the book that I wrote initially to start the whole journey and becoming an author. And then that spun off into my son asking me about, hey, dad, how do I make money? And I was like, well,
I
Dude, you
like
need to
that.
get some face paint, right? And then a clown nose, some big shoes, and learn how to do the balloon animal thing. And he's like, Dad,
I'm
Dad,
serious.
seriously. Yeah. I was like, well, write a book, man. He's like, yeah, we should write a book. And I'm like, I didn't realize that I spoke French in my household. I'm like, no, you write a book and I'll help you. And he's like, well, you write a book, I'll write a book. And then that turned into, I wrote a book, and my little Sheba there looks like a fox stopped and looked at an Amazon box. And I was like, well, the title's going to be Fox in the Box. And
That
what am I
just
going to
like
write
that.
about? Yeah. And so,
Wow.
yeah. And then I just looked at her and I realized that it's all about teamwork, and like, how can I put that into kids? That's the first thing you want to teach a kid is teamwork. Don't be me, me,
Mm.
me. How can you work with others? And so that's what the Fox in a Box is all about. And the next day after we published it, like I said, best-selling status on Amazon, which is just amazing. Just not expected.
Congratulations. That is
Thank you. Thanks,
amazing.
Roberta. Thank you.
But my pleasure. Here's the thing about it's funny you talk about kids and teamwork. When you think about kindergarten, everybody's fighting for that one toy. Siblings,
Yes,
there's always a fight. There's always a
always.
want something from you and got to
Right?
have it, and you should not have it. Instead of,
Mm,
how about we take this toy and we play with it together?
yes.
That's
Yes.
usually not the go-to when it comes to that atmosphere of fighting for stuff, especially with kids. Why is it that that is the first instinct of let's fight over it and pull each side?
I I have my personal belief, which is we don't teach kids how to cooperate with each other with words. Like, you tell the great story, and I'm going to ask you to tell it. But it's whenever someone introduces something that needs to happen
Mm,
with words, an action seems to reoccur in a positive manner. So I know you talked about on your previous show, King Shaka Zulu and one of your ancestors coming together after something was said. Like, we need to
mhm.
teach that to our kids. But can you tell me that story? Because I'd love to hear that.
Oh yes. So my one of my ancestors, same surname as me, he when King Shaka Zulu's mom died, very beloved, everybody loved her. He was in so much pain, which we all are. I lost my dad last year. It's the pain is brutal. And he said everybody, the whole nation should be on a hunger strike, which they agreed to. He was always a king who serves his nation. So whatever he says, usually they think, let's do it. Um, After a few days, one of my ancestors went to him and said, my beloved king, you know how much we loved Queen Nandi. We will mourn probably for the rest of our lives. But this hunger strike, I'm not sure if it's it. We need the soldiers to remain strong so that they are always ready to protect the Zulu nation. And if they are not eating, they're going to be weak. We're not going to have soldiers. We're not going to be able to serve the nation. He said, I like you for thinking. Because even though, yes, I'm a good king and I serve the nation, but sometimes I'm human. The hurt of losing my mom got to be too much. Even I wasn't thinking straight. I'm glad you brought that to my attention. Because when you think of workplaces, sometimes people are afraid to tell the boss a different idea.
Yes,
But yes, that's what happened. And because he thinks, King Shaka made him captain of the army.
I love that. And such
Thank
a
you.
powerful army with such a very well-known successful leader. And you see that power of communication, being approachable. The king had to be approachable in order to receive that message.
Because
Like,
if he wasn't like some kings, especially during that era, he would have been killed
yes,
to challenge the king. Some of them used to kill you,
right?
like what we call a dictator today. He would
Yes,
have been killed if King Shaka Zulu was not approachable.
that's it. And so, like, for me, that's huge. And people don't really realize that until they've been through it. But if you could teach a kid that and you put it into them early, then those kind of environments open up a communication pattern that just always it's there, but it's not available because people don't know that it's available. So when you teach your kids, hey, talk about it before you start whatever it is that you're going to do. If you're going to try to take that toy, ask if you can
Mhm.
take it. If you want to work on something together, start communicating effectively. And that all happens at a young age. And that story, I love that story. It's so powerful.
Appreciate you. Thank you,
No,
Atlas.
seriously, that story is so powerful because it speaks to approachability and good leadership. You have to be able to receive the messages that are given to you by people who want to give you the message.
Mm,
But sometimes you're just so scared to talk to a leader, a commander, a king. Those things all bring power to something that people need, and it's leadership.
yes,
But it starts with communication. It starts with
yes.
communication.
What
And
about communication? You said that's the first thing, which is very intriguing in that
mm,
list of three. What about communication seems to either be something that we struggle with in general, or if you go to university, it's not emphasized enough unless you're doing a master's in communication.
oh, that's so true. Yeah. Yeah. So communication, absolutely important. If you have any problems in your relationship, whether it's at work, at home, when when you're at the supermarket, I mean, it doesn't matter where you're at, you have to be able to communicate. That's why there's blinkers on vehicles, right? So
Mm,
that you know that it's coming
that
over. So
they
everything that we have in our
changing
world.
lanes, yeah.
That's right. But communication has to be drawn down to where it's super consumable. In today's day and era, we look for so many things to be simplified for us because we just don't have the time to dive in at the levels we used to in the past. So if you're not able to communicate in something like this that catches people's attention, something quick, something powerful, they're going to move on to the next thing. And
Because
as
there's
a
such an
leader,
overload of information. So create
yeah,
that 7 second, grab your attention, and then swiping the next screen and it's gone.
absolutely. So, okay, I always like to use the sales approach in this. In
Mhm.
the 50s and the 60s in the United States, someone had to hear things 4 times before they considered buying it or looking into it. And now, as of last year, the study is 15 times before they consider it. And the reason why is because information goes like that, right through the ear holes and out, because there's so much noise that people can't handle it all unless it's something that's going to capture their attention and they're going to be able to grasp it real quick and put it in here. So communication, always something big. As professionals, we like to use acronyms, especially in the military.
Right.
So, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. People like to shorten words or use professional terms. That introduces a lot of confusion. So I wiped out all of the professional vernacular in and around those acronyms. So if I'm talking to you, and we haven't, since we've been talking, we haven't
Mm.
used one acronym. You can go back and listen to it. There hasn't been one acronym because you're an effective communicator and I'm an effective communicator. And that's an unwritten rule that no one really knows.
Here's the thing.
Here's the thing.
When it's funny, I'm 47. How old are you?
44.
44. So more or less the same generation. When you were
Mhm.
talking earlier about how the consumption of information, I actually have to sit now and think, what's my phone number again? Whereas before, I used to memorize people's numbers before
Perfect
there were
example.
smartphones, because our brains were trained to
Mm,
remember things. There was not this overload
yeah.
of information. And therefore, even when we communicated, I think we were more clearer, unless you disagree, than we are today?
I think that we were able to communicate in longer time frames than we are now. So that allowed us to be a little bit more definitive on what exactly it is that we're looking at.
Okay.
But I I don't know. Like here herein lies the question of how do you effectively communicate? Like how are you going about it? Because I would agree with you. It seems like our past was a little bit more clear than it is now. But I would have to say we didn't have smartphones and
Mhm.
computers and videos to watch. And we used to say things like, I'm bored in America. Like I've never heard my kids say that ever. Well,
There's just
they
so much
have
that they're busy with.
just so much to consume. It's
Mm.
crazy. But cutting through that, it's super crazy. But yeah,
When
does that
it
answer?
comes to leadership, sorry,
Yeah.
back to the leadership, the patterns that you noticed, how the ones that were promoted, because we say the basis of the show is if you are so good in your technical skills that at Harvard you got your A's,
Yeah,
if you don't speak and communicate well, you're not going to climb up that ladder
that's
because you're not
true.
going to be able to. So, can you share with us your experiences in the military when it comes to that?
Yeah. From the perspective of what made my teams elite is that people knew about us. So we may not have been the best crew or the best team in every scenario, but people knew that we were very capable and that we delivered results and we always won. So Grant Cardone puts it as you don't have to be the best, you just have to be the best known. And in order to
Mm,
be the best known, I'll take that and make this an answer. In order to be the best known, you have to be an effective communicator.
that's right.
If you're really good at delivering your message and what people need to hear, people are going to invite you so that you can help them because they want that effective communication. They don't want to wait for it. They don't have time for that anymore. And they don't want to beat around the bush, as they say, trying to figure out what it is that you can do to help them. They want to know what you could do right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And so we used to do that. In my teams, I would be like, this is what I can do for you. This is how I can do it. Do you want to know anything else? And then the people are like, come on, come
Right.
talk to me about that. And I'm like, okay. And that's how it used to roll. But yeah.
I had a guest, it's funny you say that. I had a guest who said there's this scale of perceived, remember, everything is perception, perceived leadership and communication skills. If you are not good at communication, you are perceived
Mhm.
to not be as good a leader.
True. Very true.
Or if you don't know how to, if you've got a stellar resume and you just go to this job interview, if you don't know how to sell yourself, you're talking about sales earlier, you are perceived to not be as good a candidate for the job, even if you do know the stuff.
Yeah. I definitely can concur with that. And what happens is people always look at a successful person and they go, wow, that guy's or that girl is an overnight success. And they don't see the years that it took to make that successful appearance happen. And the way I like to think, I'm going to take that and make it into a thought pattern that I like to talk about. I like to talk about cycles.
Mm-hmm.
So, in order for you to do something really good, you have to do a lot of cycles in order to figure out how you can be best performing at that, whatever it is, whether it's music or writing. And you do these iterations and cycles, right?
Mm.
So, the 100-hour test is 19 minutes a day for a year. If you spend 19 minutes a day for a year on, say, playing guitar, you're going to be really good at the end of the year.
Right.
So it's those little cycles that you do every day in a consistent pattern that make you better and better. But what people see is the end result
Mm.
and not the work. So as it
Not the
starts to
sweat of the
progress,
19 minutes a
yeah,
day. Mm. Mm.
yeah. As it starts to progress 8 to 10 months into it, when you're starting to play songs, people are like, you're pretty good at that. When did you learn? It's like you didn't see the 8 to 10 months that I put in at 19 minutes a day of playing guitar in order to play the song. You just see me playing the song. And that's what leadership, that's the way leadership is always labeled. It's labeled like that. So here's where it is. You can't define leadership because it's different for everyone.
Mm.
But whenever a good leader shows up and they deliver a result, they're like, you're a good leader. And they don't see all of the failures and the time that was placed into all the different lessons that they learned in order to become two thumbs up, great leader.
Right.
So, and it's the different path for everyone. It's
That's
always
true.
different, always
It's
different
it's
for everyone.
it certainly is not a, there's not one archetype of a
No,
leader. Just
no,
like
there's
we
not.
don't talk about work culture, we say you create it. There's no brick and mortar type of work culture to say, okay, in the, because at Wall Street everybody swears at each other, screams at each other all the time. That's their culture and they're great. But you're
That's
not
right.
gonna do that at, I don't know, an insurance company or something.
It
So
doesn't work. You can't. So I see a lot of this. There are thousands of books every day published on leadership because everyone likes to talk about their brand of leadership as if it can be picked up and placed in some other place and become successful. And you know just as well as I,
No.
that does not happen.
Mm-mm.
Your brand of leadership has to be formed and molded into whatever the problem set is so that you can deliver a solution and then look at it again and do it again. And each time you do it, you're going to get better. But people don't want that. They want it instant, immediate. How can I get better? And I hate to say it because it's so cliche. I can give you what to look at, but I can't tell you how to do it. It's
Yep.
an easy solution, but it's going to take a lot of work to get there. And people don't like to hear that sometimes, but it's the truth. And your brand of leadership is going to work because it's yours.
Mm.
When people look at problems, they try to take someone else's brand of leadership and put it in themselves, and it comes out and it's fake. People don't follow fake. People see right through fake.
What was that
Fake.
accounting firm? Garbage in, garbage out.
All right, yeah, that's it. Garbage in, garbage out. That is exactly right. And you know it's true because if you take somebody's garbage and you try to make it into gold, it's just comes out garbage. It's so true. But sometimes one person's trash is another man's treasure. So
Treasure. There
there's
you
lessons
go.
to be learned from everything.
For sure, for sure. And then when it comes to being in the military, what do you think we talk about leaders being approachable? What creates psychological safety
Psychological
in an
safety.
environment like that? Yeah.
Yeah. So the great saying, I think it was Dale Carnegie who said it, is people don't care about what you know until they know how much you care. So if you genuinely ask somebody, how are you doing? And you aren't looking at your phone and you aren't looking around to see who's looking at you, ask the question, and you're paying attention to them and you can just spend that time with them. They see you. They see you as real. And then after a couple times of really seeing you care, they're going to bring things to you because you care. And that's really where it is. That's where leadership 101 starts.
Mm.
That whole space that you create is what opens the door for that safety that you're talking about. It's safe whenever someone cares. It's not safe when they don't. So it's that caring value that makes you approachable, makes you a good leader, it makes you charismatic, it makes you a good listener. I don't know.
Mhm.
Snoop Dogg most recently got interviewed, and he was listening to the interviewer. And the story that I heard, I think 2 days ago, was that Snoop is an extremely
Oh,
good listener. And then he takes what he's getting and he makes it into something that's great. But
wow.
you wouldn't look at Snoop and be like, yeah, he's a good listener,
That's why I was shocked myself.
right? But it is that safety comes through listening. As a leader, you
Mm.
got to listen more. And that creates a safe space for people to bring you problems. Or you're going to hire a consultant to come in and listen to your people. And they're going to tell you exactly what you could have already learned just by being in a safe space and listening more. It's
That
crazy.
is so true. Yeah. Now let's talk about the fox in the box or Yumi in the box. Uh, so it's about parents teaching kids leadership.
Yeah.
Please talk to us more about that.
Yeah. So the fox in the box, the boxing fox, the fox in the talks, and most recently the fox in the lies, they
Mm.
all have leadership lessons. And as the story progresses, it goes into multiple things where a proven leader can look at the story and ask questions of the future leader. What it does is it acts as a tool for you and your kids to connect on something that you are not teaching your kids. At the end of the book, there's questions. And the questions go, how important do you think teamwork was for the fox and the ox to communicate and solve the problem? you could take what's being placed into the story, pull out something from your day, and have a different conversation with your kid every night. And so the parents that have talked to me about it, they give it rave reviews because one, it's 5 to 7 minutes worth of reading.
Mm.
It's five if you're going to read it and take your time. It's three if you're going to read it fast. It's 7 minutes if your kid helps you read or they read it to you. And the average time cycle for a bedtime story or right before you go to bed, parents don't want it to be more than 10 minutes.
Of course.
So if it's 7 minutes total, then you're going to spend 3 minutes talking to your kid. And 3 minutes throughout the year equals what? About 2 or 3 years
3 times
before
50.
your kid becomes a 100-hour leader discussion. It's amazing what they're going to pull out of that. And it's amazing what the parents are going to share because they're given that opportunity for the kids. So a lot of the folks that send me pictures or they'll send me thank yous, they're like, my son, my daughter wants to read this every night. And every night it's a different
Wow.
discussion. So it's a fun little thing that I never expected to encounter. But when I pushed them out, I was thinking if I could just change one kid's life, one parent's life, man, this effort is going to be worth it. And now I've gotten hundreds of pictures and lots of
Wow.
different stories from those books, which I'm glad. I'm happy. I'm very blessed and fortunate.
Congratulations,
Thanks,
especially for
Roberta.
transforming those lives. Because here's the thing. We always talk about, like we said, communication skills are not taught at university. So you have grown-ups needing these lessons and they're getting them at such a young age.
Yes, yes.
That
It
is
is fun.
amazing.
Well, what's interesting and not talked about in our space is how much kids can teach us as parents. So when you're looking at a problem, you as an adult don't ask as many questions as kids do. And whenever a kid asks a question, you think about it in the most simplest form. And if you're thinking about it in a simple form, it allows you to take the story and the lesson and really dissect it to where it's approachable by anyone. So if you could teach a kid, you could teach anyone. And what you're doing is you're giving your kid an opportunity to ask you questions where you might be assuming other people would pick up the communication and understand you.
Mm.
So it helps with communication as a leader. And your kids are helping you do that without even knowing that they're doing it. So it's crazy the amount of greatness that comes out of these stories. And I'm just glad to be a part of it, honestly.
That
It's been
is
good.
absolutely amazing. So how did your son perceive leadership as you guys were writing this book together?
Yeah. So my son actually had me rephrase a couple of the questions. So at the end, I had like very, very hard questions that kids wouldn't really be able to answer. And I was like, well, if the parent can explain it, and he's like, stop, just stop. What do we need to do? What kind of lesson do we need to have here? And it's
Mm.
not like education where the kids need to get a degree. Just make it something simple. And so perceiving leadership from his perspective, he's seen me on stages.
Mhm.
He actually loves to speak. He spoke for the first time last year at a speaking competition in Phoenix and just made me super proud.
That is,
Um,
wow.
yeah. So he, if you ask him what leadership is, he'll probably tell you it's through example that you'll find leadership. So he watches me. He comes out to my speaking events. He comes out to my events. He picks up a lot of things, and then he'll ask me questions at the end. But he's just a great kid. I'm very, very lucky.
You are such a blessed parent. It's through example that you will find leadership. I have not had anybody, me included, that has said that on the show. That is so powerful. It's
Yes,
through example that you find leadership. Let that sink in for a moment.
it's through example that you'll find leadership. It's absolutely the truth. I love it.
Wow. And then, so he helped you author the other books as well, the other Fox series?
So the stories themselves were always written by me,
Mm-hmm.
and then he would tell me if it doesn't work. Uh, the illustration we have Jason Pakliwan, who does the illustration for us.
Mm.
And what Jason will do is blocks of illustrations. So we'll send him the whole book, and he'll do 3 to 4 pages every week. And then he'll do 3 to 4 pages, and then it'll end up being a book after about a month or two. And what my son, his name is Braden, what he'll do is he'll go through and be like, the fox's ears are colored this color with a black tip. And then here they're not. That's going to be a distraction. I'm like, well, I never would have saw that.
Wow.
Or the fox has fur on his leg, or the ox has fur on his leg, and then he doesn't. Or one of the big ones that I never would have caught was the ox has a patch over his eye.
Mm.
And then a couple series later, a couple like 10 pages later, it's over the other eye. I'm like, wow, I never would have picked that up. So
That's gonna be a movie producer because
he's finding all the Easter eggs.
I'm telling you, have you seen those movies where I don't know how people pay this much attention, because I see the stuff on Twitter. I never notice it myself.
Right.
But one moment the person is walking down the stairs with slippers, but as soon as they reach the living room, because it's a different scene, they're no longer wearing the slippers, and people are like, when did she take the shoes off? Did you notice that? Continue to the conversation.
It's amazing what people pay attention to. It's amazing.
I think that's going to be a movie. He's the next Steven Spielberg.
He could be.
Wow.
Whatever he does, he's going to make me proud. He's a good kid.
That is amazing. And then back to parents and kids. So the lessons from the book, have they noticed positive differences in their kids' behaviors as well? Not just that they love the story, but in the way they interact with other kids. Do they fight less? Do they cooperate more?
Yeah, I haven't heard that, but I will tell you, whenever a parent talks to their kid, after a while, the kid develops a little block where they can't hear everything mom and dad are saying, because mom and dad are always giving them negative things. The book offers an opportunity for positive parenting to happen. So someone else is bringing in the problem, me, and then someone else is bringing in the solution, but mom and dad get to talk about the solution, not the problem. So all of the questions are geared towards solutions. So they look at their parents differently than they would have whenever they're getting yelled at for, sticking their fingers in something that they're not supposed to stick their fingers in, like a socket or something. Don't do that. You hear that from parents all the time.
Don't run with scissors.
Yeah. So those are the opportunities that I'm opening up, not necessarily more or less with siblings. It's just an opportunity for you to connect with your kids. And parents and teachers, that's leadership. That's leadership at the maximum level. So the fact that parents are getting stuff out of this book, and it's a leadership book, and there's no leadership series, there's no leadership category
for children. Kids. I haven't never heard of it. You're the first one. Yeah,
thank you. So, and it spoke volumes whenever we published it, and it became a bestseller the next day. I mean, it's needed, and yet I'm the only one filling the space right now. So I like it, but
please keep going. More. Yes.
Yeah. So I actually have a program where I teach people how to do this and become bestsellers themselves. So on my website, leaders-kit.com, I have a package where people can pick up the 9-step process, the exact 9-step process that we use to publish the book and become a bestseller. And it's super cheap. I actually am paying someone from my Rule of 3 book a lot of money to help me market it. I mean, a lot of money.
Right.
And I'm not charging that for the exact same steps that took us 3 years to figure out how to get to the #1 spot on Amazon. And that one, I want people to contribute into the space. I want there to be a kids leadership category one day. And I think we're going to be able to do that. Dr. Seuss sold 100 million books during his lifetime. And I think with the power of ebooks and technology, that if we create a community of leadership authors for kids, we're going to be able to surpass that easily in 5 years, which is powerful.
And
It's
thank you
powerful.
for being a trailblazer in that space, because certainly that's a gap that no one other than you is currently filling.
Yeah, I'm welcoming
Mm,
people. I have two people in my program where I do one-on-one coaching,
right.
um, and their books will come out in the next month or two. They will be bestsellers, guaranteed
For
bestsellers.
sure. With your
Yeah,
guidance, that's a given.
I
Yes.
guarantee it. Whenever I do my one-on-one, I guarantee bestseller status because
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I know how to work. I know how to do it. I did it by accident on the first time, but now I know how to do it, and what it takes, and what categories, and what keywords, and how to publish it and get it out to the world. And yeah, I mean, all three of the books that I published before this last one, which comes out on Friday, they're all
Mm.
worldwide bestsellers. And
There you
so,
go.
yeah, taking all the information that I was going to use for my other book, and then all this stuff, it's yeah, I want to help people get that title, because you could spend 19, 20 years becoming a doctor and walk into a room and they'll be like, that person's an expert.
Mm.
Or you could spend 30 days with me and get the title bestseller and have even more clout than a doctor. And it won't cost
Because the
a hundred
lessons you
thousand
learned in
dollars.
3 years, you condense them into that short
Yeah.
30-day period. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All the lessons on how to become a bestseller. I can definitely help you get there in the space for kids books, and especially leadership,
Mm.
because it's something that the world is just thirsty for. And so, people don't believe me. The last person I told about it was like, there's no way you can guarantee it. I'm like, I will give you all of your money back and pay you if I can't get you a bestseller
Because,
status.
like I said, you're the first. I remember when you approached me to be on the podcast, and I read your profile. I'm like, leadership for kids. Oh, this is a first. I literally said that. I'm like, oh, this is a first.
It is.
We
It
haven't talked
was.
about leadership for kids. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. And it's just needed. Like I said, 1,000 books are published on leadership just about every day,
But
and
that's
none of
more
them are for kids.
workplace, managing
No-
project teams.
Yeah.
This was the first for me that
Yeah. None of
focuses
them
on
are for
kids.
kids. It's amazing
Mm.
that no one's done it yet.
And why not do the work while they're still young? Because, like we said, we now have leadership coaches and companies because the grown-ups who are working there
Yeah.
in those spaces haven't had this kind of training. Last thing before you go, when you give your speeches,
Mm.
congratulations on being nationally ranked, by the way. What
Oh,
is the
thank you.
one thing that you think makes you connect with the audience the most?
Being real and vulnerable is huge. Like the one that won me the national stage was my personal feelings when I watched somebody light up, and it was during President Obama's administration. I would go with him to event sites, and I would be at the White House and everywhere. We would just do this whole thing, and I would always look at his calendar. And this is me being vulnerable, for a thing called a meet and greet.
Mm,
And what that was it was somebody that the president was going to meet, and then he would talk with them for a minute, and then they would take a candid photo, usually just a snap, nothing posy. They would just take a photo of
mm,
them communicating, and one of them really hit me hard, and I didn't realize it was so powerful until later. But it goes like this: the president walked into the room, and there was an old man in a chair, and he was just hunched over. It didn't look like he was having a good day at all, and his wheelchair was just sitting there. And when the president walked in, he said, "How you doing, young man?" And with this presidential booming voice, the man's shoulders rocked back, right?
mhm.
And this face that was full of wrinkles turned into his smile, and he immediately became a younger man. And he was happy. The environment, the vibe changed, right? And I didn't realize that was for me until later, whenever I was giving some positive vibes to one of my team members. I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" And immediately I saw the same reaction from somebody that was much younger. But I didn't have to be the president of the United States to make that impact,
Right.
and neither do you. Anyone can make that impact by being positive, by being there, by listening and really caring. Because when the president, a recognized leader, recognized someone else, that magic happened, and you are being recognized as a leader by somebody all the time, and you have that magic inside of you. So that super powerful moment it's vulnerable because like I experienced that and I felt the vibe and I was like, yeah, this is great. But I didn't realize that was for me until much later when I started doing similar things. So there's a famous study out there that says you are the average of the top 5 people that you hang around, whoever's in your
Yes.
life. So I'm adding that 2 things, 3 things. Your phone also affects who you are. Your computer also affects who you are. And then what you take away, your notes, whatever you're writing in your journal, they make you who you are. So it's these 5 people plus those
Yes.
3.
Those
And
habits.
that should be a new study being opened up because that is really the world we live in. And so my vulnerable moment was when I was taking the notes and I was like, that's something I need to do more of. And we don't do that self-reflection enough, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I wasn't doing it enough until I was writing about that moment. And I was like, dang, I need to be way more caring, I think.
Mm.
Yeah,
People want to be seen, and when they are seen, like you said, they literally light up.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Roberta.
And back to the note taking, now that you mentioned it, first there was this era of gratitude journals. I'm
Yes.
grateful for air, for food, and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then we now had come to achievement journals because people are feeling so despondent and wondering if they're
Mm.
capable. So if you write even the little things you achieved and were able to do, it then props you up to think, hey, I can try something new. It lessens the fear and increases the confidence. But now this note-taking idea, every time something happens, you're like, oh, wait a minute, let me make a note of this. I think I really like it.
Yeah. I'll tell you, one of the things I absolutely would recommend to your listeners, help them become a better communicator and a better leader, is to write down the top 3 things that are positive that happened every day and the top 3 things that you could improve on.
Mm-hmm.
But it needs to go like this: the top 3 things that you can improve on, and then the top 3 things that were good. That way, whenever you stop that thought process, it's a positive thing that stays in your head. It's very important.
That's why those come last, the positive ones.
Yeah, always end on a positive note. You've heard that, right? Do
Right,
that with
right.
yourself. Do that with yourself, and I
Mm.
guarantee you'll become a better communicator because you'll start to rewire the reticulator activating system in your brain, which is the key part to picking out things that are relevant to making yourself better, to keeping yourself in a very good shape, and to
Mm-hmm.
staying mentally sharp. So those things are super important for you to do. And your brain will actually start looking for those positive things when you end on those positive things. So you always
Three
want to
things
see
to
what you can
improve.
improve.
3 things to improve. 3 things that are positive, and then you end with the positive ones. I really like that.
Absolutely.
Last words of wisdom, Atlas Aultman. What would you like to say to us before you go?
I would like to say you should never stop learning. I'm glad that your listeners are turning in a lot of their attention to you. Your show is amazing. Like you said at the beginning of every show, if you are an effective leader, you're going to be listening to shows like this. If you want to become a better communicator, to become better, you're going to be listening to shows like this. If you are into making your life better, you're going to be listening to shows like this. So just want to say thank you to your listeners. If they want, they can come out to my website, leaders-kit.com. I'll have a special uh, promo code, Roberta. So if they buy anything, they'll get a discount on there. And I'll also offer to you a little bit later one of my books. So however you want to give away the book,
Yes.
absolutely. The Fox and the Talks, the #1 on Amazon. You can have that book for one of your listeners. So whoever's keying into you is definitely going to get that book, and that'll help them with their. So our words of wisdom is never stop learning. Thank you so much for having me on your show, Roberta. It's been awesome.
My pleasure, Atlas. Thank you so much. Words of wisdom from Atlas Aultman, the best-selling author of leadership books, the former Air Force Special Operations, Communications, and nationally ranked speaker in the US. But before you go, again, let's remember that website, Please give it to us. I'm going to put it on the show notes.
It's www.leaders-kit.com.
Right. And if you've been listening to this show, it's going to be /Roberta so that you get discounts on the products on the website. So if you want to win the book, The Fox in the Box, anybody who goes to our Apple website and gives a rating, and on the rating you write Fox in the Box, you will be the winner of the book, The Fox in the Box.
Perfect.
If you hashtag Fox in the Box and write the rating on the Apple website of the Speaking and Communicating podcast, you will be the winner of Atlas Aultman's Fox in the Box, the bestseller on Amazon. Thank you so much. I had so much fun.
Absolutely. I did too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Don't forget to subscribe, give a rating and a review, and we'll be with you next time.